The minute you plea, you're waiving every single right you've ever fucking had. You're negotiating no term of service of your participation in these tribunals. Think about these things. Big bombs.
Doing this evening. See if we got all the sites up. Yeah, we got DLive running. I think Entropy is going now. Very good. Dean, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
I got a bunch of people to write down questions, actually, in my Telegram channel. So I wrote a bunch of those down. And I thought we would start with the introduction of what private member groups are. A few people have asked me about these.
And I point people all the time to the Constitution of Canada, that if it's a valid document, and this is how I phrase all my letters and communications with any government office when I contact them. Among other things, I always start off by saying, okay, let's pretend the Constitution is a valid document. So we're going to proceed as if we're on the basis that this is a valid document. If it's a valid document, then Section 2D, which is the unlimited right and freedom of association, says I have the right to freely not associate with you. So out of the gate, I already have a constitutional right under the Constitution Act of Canada, 1982, to freely not associate with Her Majesty the Queen. Right? So I can withdraw my person on those grounds alone, but that same freedom also guarantees us the freedom to then associate with each other in a private means, which basically means forming our own private societies, our own secret societies for our own benefit and not the public's benefit. That's all it is. It is no more nefarious or difficult than that concept. That's all it means.
So a secret society or private members group, could that also be an association?
It is an association. That's exactly
it is an association.
What it is.
So
That's
is that what
we're
referring to when we're talking about the bar association?
That's what it is. They have agreements that they swear out when they join the bar as a lawyer to not discuss certain things with their clients, and also that all agreements that a lawyer swears to by joining the bar association automatically binds to their clients through that representation, as part of their secret society, their private society, their lawyers guild that actually gives them a title of nobility out of England. Like this is not bullshit. This stuff really exists. You're not meant to figure it out because you're supposed to remain a peon, a slave, right? You're an indentured servant, and you volunteered for it, which is law. You can volunteer to be a slave. Voluntarism,
and you feel like
that's
that.
what it is.
You really feel like that when you walk into the courts. It's intimidating. I mean, they got a judge sitting up on a bench and he's looking down at you. There's cops there, and it's a big, huge building, like usually with no windows in it.
Yeah, they were designed that way. Like people have to understand that the people that are behind the governments, the private societies that control government, they know what makes people tick. They've done the studies. They've done. Like I used to know the name of this research think tank that they got over like 300 scientists and psychologists all together in the 1920s or 30s, and they said basically find out what makes people tick. So they did. And I mean, a lot of it was like brutal experiments they did on people to find out how we react to things and stuff like that, right? So they know everything about the way that people react, generally speaking. And their entire system is designed to intimidate us and to be imposing in a way that makes us complacent and not really want to fight back based on those guidelines. And it's all psychological. That's exactly why courtrooms are designed the way they are. Like I said, this is the whole point of what I taught in 2010 was I said, listen, guys, we're not losing freedom. We never had it. They're just more blatant about it now because we're starting to fight back. And the more we fight back, the more we're going to find out we never had it in the first place, right? Complacent people are easy to govern. Non-complacent people are not easy to govern, and that's when the true colors come out. It's visible to the point where your outward intentions are made clear. What your society does internally is your own business, but outwards, that's why most nations usually enter into treaties like the international covenants and other peace treaties and non-aggression pacts to say, listen, we're going to leave you alone, but you leave us alone as well too. We have a non-aggression pact kind of idea, right? And these are all the kind of treaty stuff that you want to make sure that you enter into with governments before you really get going, to let them know that no, we're not here to come and shoot up, the Parliament building. We're not here. We don't care what you do. In fact, fuck off. The whole point of us leaving is to have no further association with you. We just want to do our own thing. We want to self-govern. We want to have our own private association. And that doesn't involve you. And the only reason something would ever come to violence is because you're trying to force us to stay in your system so you can keep sucking the life force out of our bodies because you're a bunch of fucking vampires, right? Like that's so we have every right to do this. That's all some of these native reserves in Canada are doing. We got several native reserves now in Canada that are recognized as being completely autonomous. They are
Right.
autonomous zones. They are not part of Canada, but they have a treaty with Canada. So Canada is still like that umbrella organization over all these different groups within Canada. They're obligated by international law to be that main administrative force that governs all these other groups within Canada. But within Canada, we have the right to have our own autonomous groups. And that doesn't mean we need to have an actual geographic zone, because a political entity itself, by definition, means a non-geographically or like a nation is a non-geographically based political affiliation. You don't have to have a specific zone, a geographic base somewhere. You can be a scattered people, just like a religion is, right? Like, is there some place called Christianity? Is that a place? It's a knowledge and skill problem. It's also a control problem, as we spoke about. The legal person is a real thing. The birth certificate and the creation of a legal person at birth is a real thing. You weren't supposed to know about that. That was part of the
Yeah,
scheme or scam.
I got my
And
birth
that,
certificate right here. Actually, I brought it
yeah.
over. I've shown
But
people
there's
before,
nothing,
right at the very bottom, the
yeah.
Canadian
There's nothing wrong with
banknote.
these things. It's yeah. Well, and people automatically think that that means that there's that the birth certificate itself, like the physical thing itself, is what's important when it's not. It's what it signifies, right? It's a on a lot of my live streams, the way I really kind of get into explaining is I just say, listen, there's two worlds going on here. There's the three-dimensional flesh and blood God creation world, and then there's the two-dimensional world of paperwork and legal fictions that was kind of superimposed over top of that. And they're operating at the exact same time, but they never interact with one another at all. One is a play on the other. That's the system of commerce. That's the holy sea of commerce over top of the land. And people are like, oh, they're practicing admiralty law on land. No, they're not. The holy sea of commerce exists over top of the land only in so much as it's a completely different layer of a legal system that doesn't interact with the one below it, which would be the three-dimensional world where men and women are. And this is why these people that teach certain law systems out there, they teach you to go into courtroom and tell them that, well, you just tell them you're a flesh and blood man,
Yeah,
existing in the
yeah.
kingdom of God. It's like, okay, well, they don't give a fuck about that because they don't get themselves involved in that jurisdiction because that's God's business. They keep themselves to commerce in our two-dimensional legal fiction world where we're just a character playing in that, right? That's why my videos always touch on that. I always say, no, I'm WolverDean.
Yeah. Do you know anything about getting a land patent?
I'm glad you brought that up. Somebody messaged me just the other day saying, "No, no, land patents are the remedy." And I said, "What do you mean land patents are the remedy? There's no such thing as land patents anymore."
Oh no.
And there isn't, because that raises a whole other argument. But this person said, "I said I can't." I said something, then he said, "No, no, land patents are above the jurisdiction of the government. They're outside the jurisdiction of the government and they're above the jurisdiction of the government." And right away I didn't even respond. I wrote down a piece of paper, address land patents, and then my next comment on my own notes were, if it's above government and outside their jurisdiction, who the fuck issues it?
God.
It doesn't make sense. This is what happens when people can't use reason and logic. No, no. When you get a land patent from the government, it's outside their jurisdiction and it's above them. Then how the fuck could they issue them?
Well, that's
That
a good
doesn't
point.
make sense. Like, people don't think about this stuff. Does God come down and issue you a fucking land patent? Like, that's probably the next argument I'm going to hear.
um,
Well, and I've always been very peaceful in my intentions. I've told people since my earliest videos, I don't believe in protesting. I don't believe in violence. We don't need it. We're better than that. In fact, the most successful organizations and the most successful people on the planet right now, I'll go back to the Amish. I mean, they just breed like
yeah.
rabbits. They're successful. They're taking over. When is the last time you saw the Amish go to a government building and protest a decision the government made? They don't. When was the last time you heard them bitch complain about anything? They don't. When was the last time you even heard from the Amish? You don't.
You just don't.
It's
Well,
impossible for the government to have more authority than I have as an individual because the government is supposed to be the authority granted to them by the people. They're not some benevolent fucking organization that dropped down from heaven and governs over people with some fucking godlike powers. The literal idea of a democracy is supposed to be you give us your authority and then we use your authority to govern society. So they can never have more than what you had yourself originally. The problem is that once you give them that authority, you no longer have it. You're now subject to them. And that's what a union is. That's what democracy is. And that's what modern governments are. They're not republics where the rights of the individual remain supreme. You've given your ability to a representative. You've given your voice to a representative, right? Like for somebody to speak with your voice. And that's why a lawyer, when retained, is given the unlimited power of attorney or unlimited right of representation to speak as you in court. Not for you. They are you when they're speaking. That's why you're not allowed to speak unless the court gives you permission to. How the fuck are you not allowed to speak in a courtroom until the court gives you permission? It's because the lawyer is you until you're given permission to speak, whether you voted or not, and whether your guy won or not. If you're registered to vote, you're deemed to have voluntarily given that unlimited right to be you to your representatives, whether you choose to not vote or not. It's like, I didn't vote, so that I don't care about that. You're still registered to vote, which means the system sees that you have voluntarily given that right of representation to that person in particular, which in Canada right now is Justin Trudeau. So if you are registered to vote and you did not, or you voted for somebody else, you've had your say, and your say is Justin Trudeau is me making the law. He is you. So you've chosen the biggest loser and child fucking coward on the planet to speak with your voice to make laws in Canada. Whether you like it or not, that's the reality of the situation. Without even getting into free man stuff, without getting into birth certificate stuff, without even getting into how to claim that all back, how to go your securities, how to find the fucking, I'll call it the rainbow account, right? That doesn't exist. It's got $11 billion in it. We're all going to be fucking 11 billionaires if we get access to these trust accounts that exist. It's a fucking red herring that was created in the movement to keep people looking for free fucking money instead of looking for freedom. So, anyways, that's how democracy works. That's how the right of representation works. When you give away your power of representation, it's gone. And then that is now you making laws. And since you made the law, you entered into that agreement, you did. When you then go and do something that's contrary to that law, you violated your own fucking contract. That's what you're in court for, a breach of contract because you gave your fucking word. In fact, you're the one that even made the fucking law. Freedom of association. There's a federal form to remove yourself from the voting registry, and there's a provincial form to remove yourself from the voting registry. The third level is your local government, which is either a town, municipality, county, or other district, depending on what province you're in.
Interesting.
Yeah, better believe you can. Again, it's these invisible strings you didn't know exist that bind you. These are adhesion contracts. You didn't even know they were binding you. Democracies are like the Borg, and you're no longer an individual when you join the Borg, whether you're forced to or you volunteer for it. Once you're Borg, all individuality is erased. That's why it's the opposite of a republic, where the rights of the individual remain supreme. In a democracy, you get absorbed into the collective and you're now Borg, and they all speak with one voice. Like they put this shit in your face. That's exactly what the Borg is in fucking Star Trek. It's democracy.
Mob rule.
Mob rule. They all speak with one voice. Individuality will be erased. Think about that for a minute. That is what's gone on when your person is pledged to a collective. Freedom of association, Article 2D of the Constitution Act, they make sure you have the right to join their collective, to lose all individuality and do what the fuck you're told. Voluntary compliance, voluntary slavery. Voluntary slavery is far worse than involuntary servitude because when you're forced into slavery, at least you have recourse. When you volunteer into it, equity says it will not aid a volunteer. You're fucked.
God damn it. It's so true. It is commerce law. When you sign into a contract, your word is your bond. We've all,
But I want the return of the independent, non-democratic, republic type people that have their rights fully restored. That's what happens when you take control of your person. You remove yourself from their democratic collective. That's the biggest problem. Or you put limits on their representative authority. That's the whole thing people understand about contracting is everything's a fucking negotiation. If you don't set terms and conditions, that means there's none. And I talked about this on my last live stream. I said, listen, and I think I figured out one of the passages in the Bible where it said that surely even the murderers and the prostitutes will get into the kingdom before you. And I thought about it. I said, yeah. I said, that's because even prostitutes know to negotiate the fucking contract. You're getting another to represent you in some way for a specific purpose.
yeah.
These are all contracts. Everything you just described there, and that's I gave you the situation there, Dan. I reiterated it to another buddy of mine. I was talking on the phone later on that the same day. I said, "Listen, man," I said, "what you've done with with government, with the federal government of Canada, the corporation, is you have given them literally an unlimited power of attorney with full liability waiver, which means you've said, yeah, you represent me in every possible way, in every possible for every possible reason, and you're free from liability if you harm me in any way. We put no conditions on our association with them whatsoever, none, literally. If I was a lawyer and someone gave me unlimited power of attorney and a liability waiver, which meant I was free of any possible liability for anything I did while acting on that unlimited power of attorney, and they did that at noon, by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you'd be serving me fucking drinks at your own pool. You would have no fucking house, no bank accounts, no cars, no anything left. It'd be fucking gone. I'd steal it all because I represent you in every possible way and I can't be held liable in any way, shape, or form. Is that not what's going on right now? The word I used in one of my last live streams there, the word vested. I read the definition of vested and what it means to have a vested benefit in something. And that's what we've done with the government. We give them a vested benefit. It literally means an absolute right of ownership, absolute, unlimited, fucking in every possible way and shape and meaning of the word. So they've said, okay, thanks for giving me 100% of your fucking assets and birthright. I'm going to go leverage it to these cunts over here is going to loan me all the money I'll ever need to steal and fucking embezzle everything I possibly can out of the public coffers and live well and leave you stuck with leave you stuck with the bill. And that's what they've done. 100% of the problems is you gave away all your representative authority to a bunch of cocksuckers that entered you into every greasy, dirty, shitty fucking contract you could imagine on your behalf, and then you refuse to live up to the terms. So quit worrying about these little microcosms. There's one fucking problem. You don't control your person. Yeah. Controlling the person returns the benefits to you. Then income tax deductions don't become a problem anymore. People are always saying, well, yeah, but Dean, what about, do you have a GST number and a PST number for your
No.
business and do you collect taxes? Yep, you're fucking rights, I do.
So
These are
they
all
still do that?
benefits.
I haven't had a business in 20
What
years.
these are, you got to remember, any opportunity to contract with Her Majesty is a good opportunity. Just negotiate it to your own benefit. If you just take every opportunity, and the word contract and opportunity are synonymous with a branch of the BC government kind of thing. And I'm not here to buck the system in that way because of course I got my business, which is an extension of myself, but they tried to fuck with me a little bit to do with my business over here. And it's something that would have affected my business had they taken whatever it was away that they threatened to take away. And I got back to him right away, and I CC'd my response to this particular government department, and I CC'd that to the Solicitor General for British Columbia. Like I don't fuck around; I go right for the throat. When I send a response back, I send it to them, and I CC the whole fucking thing to the Solicitor General for BC, and I say, no, no, this is this. You just entered the fucking big leagues now, bud. And within 24 hours, what they had tried to do to me was I got a notice that they had retracted it. And they tried to tell me that the reason they retracted it was I was in compliance with whatever fucking act or statute that they wanted me to comply with. I didn't comply with fuck all. I just sent them a notice of what was going to happen if they continued along the path that they were going down. And they must have got something from up above. And by that, I don't mean God. I mean their God. Their
Right.
fucking next higher in chain of command said, don't fucking go there. Because I went into everything from the fact that, like I just said, when I send off my notices, I make sure I'm well informed. When my documents go off, like I'm going off, like when I go off, and I do, I started with, let's pretend that in 1890 Queen Victoria did not rescind the right of succession to the British North America Act, which she did. Let's pretend that, and as my friend just reminded me yesterday, actually, in 1893, Queen Victoria did not revoke the enacting clause for the British North America Act, which she did. Let's pretend that with no right of succession, which was revoked in 1890, that in January 22nd of 1901, Queen Victoria died, which she did, and there was no right of succession to the BNA. So, having said that, I literally said that in my document. Having said that, um, let's pretend the Constitution Act is in full force and effect, because the 1982 Constitution Act is actually an amendment to the original 1867 Constitution Act, which used to be called the British North America Act. Said, let's just pretend all that's valid. Let's start there. We're going to pretend this is valid. And that's what I say. Having said that, then I go on about fucking the control of the person, the vested rights and interests, the this and that, everything else, the contract I'm under. And then I start to modify the terms of my contract. And I let them know if they ever contact me again, ever, ever, to pull any of the shit that they're doing, that I'm going to invoke certain things and I'm going to go straight to federal court to collect on it. And they fuck off instantly, because they're subject to contract law. They are, and the courts will enforce that. And all you ever had to do was negotiate the terms of your subjugation, and negotiate in your favor. And when you understand that you don't need them, but they need you, what would that do to your position in negotiating contracts?
Put you in the position of advantage, really.
Pretty favorable in my books. Fuck this and blah blah blah. And I'm trying to tell you guys that if you just picked up a book from the 1800s on contract law and read it a couple of times, understood how to
I,
contract, and then treated every fucking situation you ever run into as a contract to negotiate in your favor, your problems would end. Well, here's the thing: is that all these things the government's trying to force us to do, I'm not even saying I'm opposed to them. I'm simply saying I'm going to do them under my own terms and conditions. This is literally. It took me 5 or 6 live streams of me saying the exact same thing, and people still aren't getting it. All the males and females, all the physical human beings that exist on that landmass, that's the representative of them. So the queen just represents all of us. So that's our roads when they say the crown. So when you see a crown and attorney in court, the crown means the people. Like in the courts in the states, they have that, the people versus. It's the
yeah,
people. That's who they're representing, and you're a people. They're just enforcing a contract they claim that you entered into by volunteering for representation, most likely in an unlimited manner, with no recourse. And that's very bad for you to be in a situation where you're in a courtroom where there's a contract being enforced against you, where you retained zero rights and held no liability on the other party whatsoever. Like that's a horrible position to be in. So that's why crown prosecutors have like what, a 98% conviction rate. And I spoke with Derek yesterday. The
yeah,
only reason it's not 100%, the only reason they don't prosecute 100% of you is the same reason that every once in a while somebody wins in a fucking casino. Because if every once in a while people didn't see the light go off and somebody win, you would not keep coming back to get fucked, right? It was extended from the top down by the government. They said, okay, this guy wants this officer of our government to represent him in court. Not a problem. They extend that lawyer certain rights and privileges that they already have, right? It didn't come from you. It came from the government because they already have that right to represent. I come along. I'm not affiliated or associated with that government whatsoever. They try to say, oh, you're not a member of the bar. You can't represent that person. And they'll usually give up if you raise arguments that will expose the scam going on, that you actually already gave away your right to represent and can't possibly give that to somebody else. It has to be extended from the top of the government down because you already gave that away. You're not ever giving something to a lawyer when you're hiring them. That lawyer is getting what you already gave the government from the government, not you. They've already got your right of representation. It's extended to the lawyer from the government, not you. That's why they won't let the average everyday Joe represent somebody else in court unless you go in and start making arguments that make it very uncomfortable for them to explain without having to admit that you actually didn't even have the right to give away representation to a third party because the government's already got it. Every international law imaginable on this planet that has made involuntary servitude absolutely illegal. Slavery in all its forms has been abolished. There is no question about that. But you can volunteer yourself into slavery by volunteering to do things for free. Castle.
And
If you buy enough land, you could create your own little border around it that doesn't exactly technically exist, but as long as you have the representative authority of all the people within that border, that's the border that now adheres to a certain social contract. It's all by contract, and the crown will enforce that contract. That's what they're here to do, enforce commerce. You volunteered into it. You have
uh,
no recourse because equity will not aid a volunteer. Example I give in some of my live streams is people have to understand that when they force contract, it doesn't stand, and you have recourse because a lot of times what they're doing is the example I love to give is if I raped a girl and then shoved $100 in her mouth when I was done and said, "There, you were paid," right? And then she tries to charge me for rape, and I come back and say, "No, Your Honor, it was prostitution. She got $100 for performing those services." Well, that's not really what happened. They can't force something and then throw you a couple of bucks and say, "There you go, you got compensated." You need to get these concepts in your head. You need to figure out what a trust is. You need to figure out what a contract is and how to operate both and how to negotiate contracts, enforce contracts, prove a contract exists in the first place, or that somebody else violated a contract with you because yeah, a man's word is his bond. That's what a contract is, right? So go find some good stuff written in the 1800s. People asked me that 10, 12 years ago, what book do I read, Dean? I said, go read something written by a smart person. You want to get smarter, read something written by a smart person. That's
all
it.
right.
Otherwise, I'm
What
doing I'm doing you a disservice by pointing you all to the same damn book. Go find something.
for you there? Trucker Rob asks, is it possible to renegotiate citizenship to be a government contractor? I'm not sure I
That's what you
understand
are.
that.
I understand what he's saying. You are a government contractor right now. You are. You're just government contractor with no conditions, unpaid, and no liability waiver. So you're liable for everything you do while being a government contractor under while also doing it for free. So you're in the worst possible position. Can you renegotiate that contract? I don't know. Can you renegotiate your contract with Tim Hortons? Yep. If you couldn't renegotiate your contract, would somebody be guilty of involuntary servitude now? Yep. We believe is law, but it's actually the only thing they're learning is contracts. That's it. And even they don't know they're learning basically contracts and how to negotiate contracts. They're just taught to fill out paperwork and do stuff. But it's a great study. And I'm not kidding. With even a limited understanding of this, you can already improve your life dramatically within days, weeks, not years. Peaceful ambitions. I want a contract and I want to be commercial in nature and peaceful and be left alone to engage in commerce and contracts of my own free will. That there's no problem with that. I encourage them to come to my fucking seminars. They might learn something. And what I like about what Tintirian is saying here, yes, it's made even better when you have full control of your person back or even partial control, a limited scope of authority. You can issue your own license because the only possible authority they have to issue licenses came from you in the first place. That's the only possible source of their authority. His rights are now limited to the agreements that that lawyer has through the bar association and his license to the state. His rights are limited to the authority that his representative is now bound by. That's why you should never ever have a fucking lawyer. You're automatically bound by contracts that you've never fucking seen. And I've seen what happens when people fire their lawyer and rescind those contracts, and all fucking hell breaks loose. It's hilarious, I might add. Going further from that, the minute you plea, you're waiving every single right you've ever fucking had. You're negotiating no term of service of your participation in these tribunals and their tribunals, which means they can do things like bring in this fucking media garbage as evidence because they have unlimited rights with no liability. If he was to simply serve a notice on the court that that court is liable for any harm that they cause him from hearsay or slander and defamation, that would end in 2 fucking seconds.
Slow down there, fella.
You serve them notice. You just
Come
serve
on.
a
No,
notice on the
it's
court and says you're liable. Anybody in that courtroom that says one fucking word that's slanderous or defamatory, you are absolutely liable to a defamation lawsuit, and I will sue you for defamation. He's put no conditions on his appearance there whatsoever, so that's going to be done because they're free of liability right now. They can do anything free of liability. They do not want their license to practice to be revoked. They do what they're told, and lawyers have admitted to me that they make these agreements in private while they're golfing. The fate of a case is decided before the first day of court. Oh, give me this one, I'll give you this one. I'll tell you, get me a conviction over here, and I'll fucking let this guy go over here, kind of thing, right? They're part of the same brotherhood. I hear all the time people are like, oh no, my lawyer hates other lawyers and he goes after them. They're part of the same brotherhood. They don't ever hate each other or go after each other. It's theatrics. They don't even need to justify what they're doing because they already have complete power of attorney over his person. They could send him to jail for looking at them the wrong way. But people would wake up if they did that. So they have to justify this somehow. So they'll allow anything into that courtroom to make him look like a bad guy as long as the general public then celebrates his incarceration. That's how this works. That way they don't have to expose the game. Showing no fear and basically saying, no, you know what? I do think this is all fake. And I'm prepared to stand up and say, this is all fake. And you people do not represent my person. You've got no vested benefit or vested interest or vested rights in it, period. You're not my representatives. All these laws you're claiming that my person broke, my person was under no obligation to obey because you don't represent my person. They're not laws. And they're not. They're policy. That's why among other things, you can always withdraw your plea pending further disclosure because you don't believe you got disclosure, because you cannot be forced to enter a plea until you've gotten full disclosure. And then once you demand disclosure, you can demand certain documents. Your lawyer will never fucking do this. Ever. They'd have their license yanked instantly for daring to force the Crown to produce disclosure that they don't want to have to produce, right? Because we all know they don't disclose anything. Once you get to that stage, okay, this doesn't harm your position. This is just the law. This is what the law is. You can demand full disclosure. You can bring that up at any point. Once you
I've
demand
done it before.
disclosure, okay, now you can start demanding things like, can you produce the document that shows that Her Majesty the Queen has representative authority for my person? Bam, done. The whole
That I
fucking thing
haven't
would
done
be done
before.
right there. Right there.
Michelle No says, can we have a stream on how to get your registered assets out of the system, private government pensions, RSP, etc.?
Yep. The minute you become a non-resident, they have to give it all back to you. It's actually there's CRA forms for it. There's CRA forms for it, and all you have to do is become a resident of a foreign nation. That's what a private members association is.
Dramatic pause.
You fucking wake up the first morning you're there, and you go out when they open the doors. You go make yourself a coffee, and every guy that walked up to get themselves a coffee, you're just like, "Hey, good morning," right? And you kind of get like a little bit of a look, like kind of like fuck off kind of look, right? After a couple of days of doing that, though, those guys are like kind of like, "Hey, good morning," like they'll hey, and they'll say hi to you, kind of thing. They walk away again, and after about a week or two of that, a lot of the guys going up to the coffee pot are kind of saying good morning to each other, and like you get talking to everybody, and like all of a sudden everybody's a little bit more chummy and stuff like that. The guards themselves told me that any range I ever went on, the fights literally went to nothing. It was the calmest, nicest range they'd ever worked on after I'd been there for a couple weeks, because I usually got just just people treating each other like fucking human beings. I mean, there was still the odd fight and stuff like that. For the most part, they were just way more peaceful, just treating people like human beings, and not, every time somebody walks up to get a coffee behind me, I'm fucking looking at them like I'm gonna stab them if they get too close to my coffee cup. It's fucked up. See, you can change the whole mentality of a range just by treating people like with respect.
Sure. Well, if the private members association works. We can work together with myself, Rage, you, Curtis Stone. Possibly, I think you've done stuff with him before.
Yep.
He would
I'm
be a
hoping to
great
go down and
person to
see the
talk
house
to.
he's building here in about a month or so. I'm going to head down that way and go connect with him. I haven't seen him in a while, and go check on the progress.
Very cool.
We've
Yeah,
we've got all the people. We've got all the key people. We've got everybody. We just need to unionize and organize and then do our own thing and ignore the rest of the world and fuck these communist newspapers and fuck the communist media and fuck Her Majesty the Queen, the people of Canada that want to be a part of a democracy. I don't give a fuck about them. I care about moving forward with people that want to be productive and want to live in peace and just fucking exist.
I'm right there with you, man. All right, guys. Thanks everybody for coming by, and we'll probably do another one of these conversations real soon. I'm thoroughly enjoying them.
Perfect.
See you guys.
Can I repost this video again, truncated, Dean? PTL Media now. How truncated? I'm kidding. I don't know. I'm gonna be putting up on my own Odyssey account. Try to post, if anything, like if you want to put some clips together, and then make sure you point people towards my Odyssey. That'd be cool. Then I'm very okay with that. Yeah. Anyways, own that shit. All right. Everybody have a good night. Okay. Bye bye.